Welcome to Beyond the Numbers, the podcast where conversations about wealth go deeper. This isn't about flashy success or one-size-fits-all advice. It's about real people designing financial lives that align with who they are, what they value, and the legacies they're building. We bring together voices from business, finance, law, and leadership to talk about the moments that shape them and the strategies that sustain them. Here is your host, Chris Everett.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Numbers, where money meets meaning and purpose. Today's guest has a story that proves the American dream isn't just alive and well, but it's thriving in ways that might surprise you. So from a trailer park to a cockpit of military aircraft, from fixing engines to underwriting multi-million-dollar insurance policies, my guest's journey reads something like out of a movie script. With over 25 years in the insurance industry, he recently made a bold transition that's paying off in spectacular fashion. Now, when his former company, where he was a captive agent, changed their business model and threatened to cost him $2.5 million in premium, he didn't just adapt. He pivoted as an independent agent to primarily represent Erie Insurance and is now on track to nearly triple his first-year revenue, his projected revenue. But his story isn't just about business success. He was raised by a single mom in a trailer park with a grandfather who invented the tumbler lock system, but then died penniless. He learned early that opportunity doesn't always knock. Sometimes you have to kick the door down yourself. So from selling candy as a child to mowing lawns at age 8, from Air Force avionics to American Airlines, he has never been afraid to reinvent himself when the moment demanded it. So today he runs Rolph Insurance Agency, representing Erie Insurance, where he's found something rare in today's business world. A company that actually trusts its agent to underwrite risk instead of just taking orders. So it's a partnership that allows him to write business he could never touch before, handling everything from individuals and families to small concrete, plumbing, lawn care contractors with snow plowing operations who spend maybe $1,200 a year on their liability, to accounts that exceed $100,000 a year in premium. So whether you're an entrepreneur looking for inspiration, someone considering a career change, or just curious about how the insurance industry really works behind the scenes, my guest insight will both educate and, I promise, entertain you. Plus, wait until you hear about his side hustle, drilling bowling balls, and his plans to build a Barn-dominium on 10 acres of farmland. And with all that said, ladies, gentlemen, please welcome Sam Rolph of Rolph Insurance Agency. Welcome to Beyond the Numbers, Sam.
Good morning. Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's start, Sam, with something fascinating. You went from working on aircraft navigation systems in the Air Force to American Airlines as a mechanic. Okay. And then completely pivoted to insurance. Walk me through the day you made that decision to leave aviation behind. And then what was that aha moment?
Back in 1995, American Airlines and the Transport Workers Union, who was a union representing the mechanics, negotiated a contract, and they came back with a 3.5% increase over 6 years. And at that time, that was probably the highest profit-taking time in airline history. And I wasn't mad at the company because their representatives did what they were supposed to do for the company, and our union sent in representatives that were just overwhelmed by the negotiators of American Airlines. So at that point, I said I need to find something else where I can, what my destiny and my income. And I wasn't really sure of what it was that I wanted to do. And then a friend of mine that I worked out with, he said, hey, why don't you take a look at this and give this a try? So that's how I started considering the insurance industry.
Why did you need so much income? What was your lifestyle like?
Well, I was a bachelor with a highfalutin appetite. And when I say that, I had a house with a mortgage. I had a Porsche 911 Turbo, an older used one. I also had a boat, and I was not going to allow any of that to go away. So it was a situation where I better knuckle down. And if there's an opportunity presented, I was going to have to work for it and work very hard for it.
So this guy meets you and he says, hey, why don't you sell some insurance for me? And you say, sure, why not? What happened?
With that, he offered to pay me a little bit on the side, which hindsight being 2020, which is not something anybody can do.
Yeah.
Here's what happened. I started going out to the airport and I brought applications with me. Didn't know much about insurance, but American Airlines, the company I was working with, they allowed me to sell the insurance, and the company that he was representing was a well-named brand. So I started telling my mechanic friends, gate agents, the pilots, flight attendants, anybody that would listen to me, I started selling insurance. I'd make a phone call back to this agent's office, give them all the information, quote it, write the business. And after about a year and a half, 2 years, I probably wrote about 150, 180 policies. And the company wanted to know why his production increased so dramatically. And so they set up a meeting with me, and his district manager was going over everything and said, can I see your license? And I said, so I handed him my driver's license. He says, no, your insurance producer license. I said, what's that? And the district manager looked at the agent and said, you got this guy selling insurance without a license? And the guy says, hey, he's ambitious. He wanted to try and make a couple bucks. So that's how I got into the insurance business.
So when this agent, who you were actually helping to increase his production for, showed you that statement in 1998, by the way, where he was making $20,000 a month, what went through your head?
Opportunity.
Yeah.
I saw an opportunity. All I need is that light at the end of the tunnel. And as long as it's not a train, I'm running to that light. And that light of opportunity to be able to govern how much I made gave me the opportunity to run and grab the opportunity by the tail and run with it. And take my word for it, that was not an easy task to walk away from something secure like the airline industry into something that was commission based.
So what happened in that transition? What did you do? If you're leaving American Airlines and a salary, now you're in insurance. That's a big change.
He allowed me to set up my new agency in his office, which allowed him to tutor me and mentor me, and his staff helped me. But I'm not making much to get started, so I went out and bought a lawnmower and was mowing lawns at 6 a.m. until 8 a.m., come back, take a shower, get on the phone at 8:30 a.m., and start making cold calls at the time. This was before the do not call list came out. Then I hired a telemarketer, and she came in and started helping me. And then after about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd go back out and mow more lawns. And then unfortunately, lawns don't grow in the wintertime in the Chicagoland area. So somebody said, why don't you put a plow in your truck? I said, okay. Didn't have a single account, but I put a plow in the truck because I saw another opportunity. And that's how I got into the snow plowing business and all the snow plowers and lawn care companies in the regional area here. So I did whatever it took, standing on street corners with flyers and the Oak Lawn Police Department asking me to leave, that I can't do that. So I started putting them in door slots. I got people to help me. It's just, how can you say, when you ask, you have an opportunity. If you don't ask, it's an automatic no.
True enough. And so what's interesting about that, here you are snow plowing, mowing people's lawns. You have to approach businesses if you have a plow, right? Did that feed into your insurance production as well?
Here's what happened with that. The person that told me to put the plow on my truck, he was a subcontractor for a very large general contractor that did huge accounts. So they would hire 200, 300, 400 subcontractors, and I was one of the second group to come in and be a standby group. That guy that got me in there told all of those subcontractors, said, Sammy here sells general liability insurance. So with that, I started selling general liability, work comp, commercial auto, sometimes umbrella, and then it would transition over to auto and home for these contractors. And that's how I got into contractor business and business insurance.
You remind me of something my mom used to say when I was a kid. She said, sometimes you can fall in a pilot, but come out smelling like a rose. That's kind of what was happening to you. So
Absolutely.
what's the difference? Look, you've made a risky move. Maybe it doesn't feel so risky now because you've been in it for a minute, but leaving a captive agency after 25 plus years, you were facing a potential loss of what, $2.5 in premium, which is not a small amount of money. Take us inside that decision making process. How did you weigh staying comfortable, even though they were about to change everything on you, versus making that leap that could either maybe destroy you or transform your business? What went on inside your head?
I had been talking with Erie since 2007, but I insured a chain of gas stations and car washes. It was hard to make that transition. Then the company I was representing was talking about non-renewing that chain of gas stations and car washes. And I started talking with Erie again, and Erie was very interested in picking me up. But the company I was with decided to continue. And then in 2022, they said, we're not taking on any new business. And that forced the company that was expanding with these car washes and gas stations to seek their insurance elsewhere because the company I was with wouldn't write their new businesses. And they had 5, almost 10 new locations under construction, and we couldn't do anything for them.
So you hear that sucking sound of money
Oh,
going out the door. Yeah.
you know, I was a $4.5 million agency, and I'm faced with about losing 1.9 to $2.5 million in total premium, especially when they got out of the habitational risk too. So
Yeah.
I had to make a very educated but yet risky decision. And the other thing I can't emphasize enough is you're growing up, you need to save money. You need to plan. And if you don't have a plan, you can't work the plan. And saving allowed me to sock away enough money for a rainy day. And this turned out to be a rainy year. And while I'm building the new agency, I've got that money to fall back on, knowing full well if I implement the same strategies that I did when I first got started in the insurance business, they would work with this because things don't change when it comes to hard work. If you work hard, as long as you work efficiently, you're going to do well. So
Yeah, boy.
you have to implement plans.
Yeah, great point to make, Sam, about having enough capital because life will always occur. I stress that so much with my clientele. Sometimes I have some of the younger ones that don't get it. They're so optimistic that everything will go right. And that's just not the way life goes. So good for you for being ready and having enough cash to be able to make that transition. That's really important. Okay, so talk about the difference between being an underwriting agency versus an order taking agency.
What Erie has allowed us to do as agents, they put a lot of trust in their agents, and they like to bring on agents that have got some experience. I showed that I was profitable. So they allow me to go out and look at risks, collect all the valid information, such as photographing the risk, getting the loss runs, talking with the people, and then reviewing, is this a risk that if I was Erie Insurance Company, would I want to underwrite or take a chance on a company based on their premiums? Maybe they're paying $6,000 a year in premium, but I've got $1 million building. Would I want to be that company to put $1 million on the risk for only $6,000 in premium? So it
Right.
allowed me to change from the captive world to the independent agent world, where a company actually puts a lot of trust into us. With the captive world, we were pretty much strictly on
Order
that. If
taking.
it didn't fit, we didn't want it. Whereas Erie, let's take a look at it. Maybe it doesn't fit, but let's see what we can do to help the insured. Maybe it doesn't fit right now, but let's implement some programs. Let's give them some advice on how to control these losses or how to take measures to prevent potential losses. And let's take a look at it next year if it doesn't fit right now. And that has allowed me to educate potential insureds, the ones that truly care about their business, the ones that
Yeah,
truly understand how insurance works. Those are the clients that I really want, that are open to suggestion.
sure. So it's more of a collaborative relationship with Erie than it was in the past with your previous
Oh,
insurance company.
absolutely.
And okay, so Sam, can you tell us what the difference is between being an underwriting agency and an order taking agency?
An underwriting agency allows the agent on the independent side to go out and interview the potential prospect, take a look at their operations, gather the pertinent information such as photographs, loss runs, looking at their loss control, and taking it back to the underwriter, even if it doesn't per se to say that it fits in their appetite. they're going to take a look at it. Erie takes a look at everything, and if it flat out doesn't fit, then it doesn't fit. And sometimes there's reasons why. So we give the insured, this is why it doesn't fit right now. Maybe you can take these measures, put in bollards in front of your store to prevent cars from driving through them, making sure people aren't standing on stands. It allows us to give advice and to gather the information and work with underwriting. Erie is a true underwriting company, whereas a lot of other companies in the captive side are strictly order takers. If it fits, if it doesn't, we don't want it, period. That's the difference.
That sounds really good. It's very intelligent, it's very collaborative. They're still taking all the risk, but it's a collaborative venture between the two of you. So you're projecting in new business in your first year, maybe around 700,000 or so. Is that pretty correct?
I projected between $600,000 and $700,000 in new business premium.
But you're tracking toward somewhere between 1.5 and 1.6 million, right? So what's driving this explosive growth?
Referrals. The level of service, I've got an assistant that crosses every T and dots every I. And if I bring it back, she makes sure that it fits and she follows up. We turn certificates around very quickly. So that word gets out that we, a contractor that needs a certificate or a bond very quickly, or closing documents, we get those back out usually within 48 to 72 hours. Some brokers do it in a week or a week and a half. Generally, we get it turned around in 24 hours. So word gets out, and we've always been a contracting go-to type of agency due to my contracting experience. Mm-hmm. And that has, I'm getting a lot of referrals from brokers who do not have Erie Insurance. Erie is very selective, and they would like working with the smaller agents, and Erie has an appetite that some of these brokers can't have access to with the companies that they're with. So they're referring business over to me.
That's cool. You have a fascinating background. You were raised by a single mom in a trailer park. A whole lot of wealth in a trailer park, is there?
No.
Selling candy, mowing lawns at 8 years old, helping out. Your grandfather was actually the person who created the tumbler lock system and hydraulic door closers.
Correct.
But died penniless after spending everything on your grandmother's brain cancer treatment. How did growing up with that kind of financial uncertainty shape how you approach business today?
You had to become very innovative and make things work. Nothing was handed to us. I watched the struggles my mom went through. And people that say that money doesn't buy happiness, a lot of that is true, but it sure makes your life a heck of a lot easier and allows you to sleep a little better because You're not under the stress of paying a bill. So I watched what she went through, working 1, 2, 3 jobs, and she had an education, and yet the opportunities for a single mom just weren't there in the 70s and early 80s. It was, if we wanted to eat right, I'd better figure something out. So went from taking care of lawns when I was 7, 8 years old to paper routes. And let me tell you, when you're 12, 13 years old and you got a Sun-Times, a Tribune, and 2 Hammond Times paper routes and a Sun Journal route, Sunday mornings were quite interesting because I was doing 300 and 400 papers a morning, and the Sunday Sun-Times and Tribune, one paper will break your back. But I had built a wagon, and I went through and did what we needed to do to help support the family. It's like an old farm family. Everybody pitches in.
Absolutely. So I know that money is definitely a motivator to you, but that's not all of who you are, right? You are someone that cares deeply about your team. Can you tell us what's happened recently and what's going on? Give us a story about how you're taking care of your team.
Making the transition, I could have easily walked away and just took my retirement on my buyout from my previous carrier. So I've got a lot of little side hustles going on with other little businesses that definitely generate income. And I got my debt down considerably to where I just had a home mortgage. And if I'd have walked away, it would have put my staff into a position where they would have had to find other employment. And who knows if they would have found what they are experienced in or not. I did not know. So had a good discussion with my office manager, and she was on board. She said that she saw the opportunity and she trusted my decision because she knew that I wasn't just doing this for myself. I was doing this for her family and the other individual that was selling life insurance for me.
And that speaks volumes because I know staff can be like family, especially if you know that they are just as invested in your client's success as you are. So it's a power story, and I really appreciate how you treat your team members. Let's pivot a little bit and let's go back to your military foundation. Your Air Force experience took you to Central America during the Contra conflict, to England during the Libya mission, and all over the world. But you turned down a $10,000 re-enlistment bonus because they wouldn't transfer you to Hawaii.
I'm hard-headed. Come on.
Looking
you gotta
back,
give me that.
What was leaving the military? It was one of those, okay, you said it, hard-headed decisions that you mentioned. Or was it exactly really what should have happened anyway? So talk to me about that time and how did you get in that place where they're waving $10,000 in front of you to stay?
I was a airman first class, and they had an opportunity where if you participate in Big Brothers Big Sisters, get involved in the Air Force Honor Guard. I'm involved in bowling, so the squadron first sergeant wanted me on his team, and I always made sure that I was available working on the aircraft. And I made my third stripe early, and due to that situation, I thought, man, this would be great. I'd like to go out, and when you're within, I think it's 9 or 10 months of your reenlistment, they allow you to fill out this thing known as a dream sheet. So I filled out the dream sheet, and I wanted to go to Hawaii. I had heard everything about it. I watched movies. I thought, this is where I'd like to go. So I was number one on the list at our base. And when I sewed on that third stripe, I went down to check to see what my status was, and I was no longer on the list. I said, what's going on here? And they said, because you made senior airman early, you're going to be a sergeant here shortly. And we're short on sergeants at this base in your classification code for the aircraft maintenance. Okay. And that's when they asked me about my reenlistment. I said, if I can't go to Hawaii, I'm not going to reenlist. And they said, we're offering a $10,000 bonus because there's a shortage of mechanics at this time. And I said, if you send me to Hawaii, I'll be more than happy to reenlist. And they said, no, we can't do that. And I said, okay, then I'm getting out. And my thought process was, I'll live on a park bench and learn how to sleep with my mouth closed because pigeons poop in your mouth. So you got to be careful with that. And then I made pizzas for a little while. I started working out at Erie Airport, working on airplanes out there. And then I got my EMP license. And that's when American Airlines came calling for me. And that's how I ended up with American Airlines.
Yeah, it flies into your total philosophy, which is, and you've always told me this, you have zero regrets. Everything works out the way it's supposed to work out. And that's a pretty remarkable perspective, especially for someone who's made some major pivots in life. But I'm curious, so you also said you learn from other people's mistakes and always try to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. So how do you balance that no regret mindset with being strategic about learning from other people?
If you put your heart and soul into things, things happen for a reason. If you sit on your butt, then nothing's going to happen. And there's a reason why nothing happened because you didn't do anything. So everything happens for a reason. And you are where you are because that's where you're supposed to be, where you are. And a lot of it has to do with what you decide to do with your life. I try to surround myself with people that are more intelligent than me because you become your environment. If you surround yourself with people that have no ambition, people that are negative all the time, you're going to fall into that trap. So I try to surround myself with positivity and people that have more experience, and they generally give you advice because they don't want to hold anybody back. So that's where I've learned to give other people advice and help build other people up.
It was very humbling the day that you called me out of the blue. I remember I had just finished a spot on WBBM radio, and this guy, Sam Rolph, calls me up, tells me he's an agent. He has his own insurance agency, and he's saying some pretty interesting things to me. Sam, take us back to that day and why you even bothered to pick up the phone and call me anyway.
I usually listen to the WBBM news hour at noon, and I heard this voice, and I thought, she's giving a lot of really good advice, and some of the best advice I had heard in all of the news or business hours. And you were giving advice based on not so much to build your business, but to help other people and give them good advice instead of just leading them back to you to try and make a profit. At the end of that program, I felt I needed to reach out to you and just say thank you for giving the masses such great advice. And it's rare that I do that. That just you made such an impact on me that I felt obligated that I needed to share my appreciation with whether anybody else did it or not. I felt I needed to do it just to let you know that I appreciate it. And then you and I talked for about 15, 20 minutes. You sent me over information on your Everett Wealth Management. And that's how you and I built this friendship. It was very impactful, your noon business hour.
Thanks, Sam. Sometimes when WBBM calls me to be on a spot, I say, "Are you sure you want me on that spot? I'm not going to hold back." He goes, "No, that's exactly why we want you on the spot." Oh, Lord. Thank you. So, look, let's talk about your service mindset, right? So, whether you're drilling bowling balls, which we haven't really touched on much, so you can talk about that a little bit, or you're writing insurance policies, you said you want people to leave with more knowledge than they came in with. That's rare in today's world. So tell me about that philosophy and where does that come from? How does it actually show up in your day-to-day business? Help me understand.
Ignorant is a word that means lack of knowledge. And I have an ignorance towards the advice that you give because I'm not knowledgeable in your career field and what you do. And people that walk into my agency, a lot of times there is a lack of knowledge. They think that they can drive anybody's car because they have full coverage insurance, and I have to let them know unless you have a commercial policy with a specific symbol, no, you're not going to have insurance. If you're driving a vehicle that doesn't have insurance, even though you have insurance on your car, you're going to be ticketed for no insurance and possibly get an SR22. So that's one of the forms of educating somebody. Risk management. I try when somebody walks into our door, whether it's my staff or myself, we try to give them information. Full coverage is not a term that's used lightly. We try to let people know there's comprehensive and collision, there's liability, there's medical payment. Full coverage is a term that really should not be used loosely because people that walk out thinking they've got coverage for everything have been unfortunately not educated in the fact of what insurance truly covers. So I want to make sure that everybody walks in, they walk out with more knowledge, whether it's the insurance, the bowling side hustle that I have because I was always involved with the professional bowlers tour. So I learned how to drill people's bowling balls. So when they walk in, maybe we're going to work on their swing. Maybe we're going to work on their fit or their mental game because the mental game is 100% physical and 100% mental.
Yeah. You remind me of this story that I like to tell about just knowledge in general. So if you can imagine a huge circle in front of you, and that huge circle represents every piece of knowledge in the entire universe, right? All wisdom, knowledge. If you cut a slice out of that circle or that pie, if you will, there's a small slice that represents what you and I know, Sam. Like you know your industry, I know my industry. And we know some other things. And we're clear that we know those things. There's a much larger slice out of that circle or pie. I don't know, maybe it's 2, 3 times, 4 times as big. I don't know how to fix an airplane, let alone fly an airplane. And you and my guests can be putting all sorts of things in that slice of the pie that you know that you don't know. It's the remainder of the circle, the largest piece of the pie, where we don't even know what we don't even know. So it's so important. That's where breakthrough happens. So if you can meet with an expert in a field that knows more than you can get breakthrough. Whether you're talking about how to design a property and casualty policy so that you are truly protected, or whether you're putting a financial plan or an investment structure in place for yourself, just creates breakthrough every single time. And I can't tell you how many times people come into my practice because we look at everything in their life that has a dollar sign connected, right? But when we get to that P&C section, because I was licensed for property and casualty for a long time, so I know a little something about property and casualty. I am mortified at the level of coverage and the design some people have, because their agent or their broker didn't take the time to really explain how this stuff works. And I'm talking people that have some, not just people that might not have a lot to protect, but people that have a lot to protect are insured improperly. So this is an important part of our conversation. So I'm glad that you take the time to do that. You mentioned to me that you bought some land, you got 10 acres of farmland, you want to put a barn-dominium on it. So talk to me about that. What's up with all that?
My fiance, who grew up on a farm, she's a little uncomfortable in the urban area where I live in Oak Forest, and she's acclimated herself the best way she can. She used to manage warehouses, so she she's used to the large city life, but she's more comfortable with the farm life.
Yeah.
And whenever we went out to visit her family's farm, I thought this is paradise. I've lived in downtown Chicago. I lived in rural America, and when I was growing up, downtown Chicago was awesome. But as I've gotten older, rural America, that's Main Street America, and those people are real. They're hardworking, and handshake agreements. You don't need big contracts. And every time we went out to her family's farm, they're sitting on 180 acres, and I see one house off in the distance. I don't hear anything except the birds, the wind, and sometimes the goats making their noises or the cattle. So she started looking for property just on a whim, and she says, "Hey, I found 10 acres of farmland," and the price was just phenomenally inexpensive because it's just farmland. So we decided to go ahead and put a contract on it, and we bought it. And the only thing we have to do is put in a well and septic system. But we've got our share of toys. She's got a horse, and we needed storage. We don't need such a big house. We live in a 2,300 square foot house. We need about 1,800, but we want a gargantuan garage, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to have the frame built and do the rest ourselves. She's built 2 houses. I built a warehouse. So we've got a little bit of knowledge, but we also are going to be leaning on contractors that are more knowledgeable in a lot of this than we are. So with their advice, we're going to have the frame built, and we're going to build our own little place that's just ours. And she can have her horse and her goats, and I can have my motorcycles and my cars and the older stuff, and just enjoy life, live on the farm.
Sounds wonderful. You know what else is cool about going out there is there's not a lot of light noise above you. So you
No.
can probably see the stars at night, which is
Oh, I wouldn't say it's rated dark, but it's dark enough to see a lot of things. And hey, I will say this: we're near a subdivision that has their own runway. So guess what? I'm an A&P mechanic, so I can go over and talk with those people that own all those airplanes with the community that has their own runway.
Oh, hey, where do you see yourself 10, 15 years from now?
I'll still be doing this. I enjoy this. After working on airplanes for 15 years, 14, 15 years, working out in the elements. But sometimes it was nice, sometimes it wasn't. The insurance business is very taxing mentally and emotionally at times, but physically, it's not difficult. The most difficult thing is getting off of our butt and getting out and exercising. And I highly recommend that to people that are in an office job. Get out and do something physical. Otherwise, it could become detrimental. So I see myself doing this, maybe not as much. My staff will be doing more. I see myself doing this into my 70s, 80 years old. As long as I don't lose my faculties, I'll still be doing this because I enjoy
Hey,
this.
honey,
I
if
enjoy
Warren
helping
Butt
people.
can do it, so can you. So we need to wrap up here, but what advice would you give someone who's thinking about a major career shift and actually a major career shift even later in life?
If you start thinking about it, put everything down on paper, plan, make sure you have a savings account, because that's one of the reasons why so many businesses don't succeed after the first year, after the first 3 years, after the first 5 years. They
Yeah.
don't have a plan on how they're going to get their business out. Luckily, I was in it for 25, 26 years, so I already have a captive audience. But when I got started, you have to put things down: a 1 year plan, a 3 year plan, a 5 year plan. Don't just jump out of the frying pan and into the fire. But if there's a door of opportunity that opens, don't be afraid to run through it and deal with the consequences on the other side. Otherwise, you're the person holding the door open and everybody's running through it, just like Bitcoin. Unfortunately, I didn't get on with Bitcoin when they first offered it, and I missed out on probably about 12, $15 million because somebody said, "Hey, give this a try." That was one door of opportunity I did not run through,
Oh,
but I
wow.
have no regrets because who knows? Nobody knew anything about it. So I did what I was supposed to do, and this is where I am. But anybody who's looking at doing that, plan. Don't just do it, especially if you have a family involved. You ask for advice. Ask for people that have done it. There's a wealth of advice out there. Don't be afraid to ask.
Hey, I have an idea. Hire a fiduciary to help you look at every single dime in your life to see
And
what's
that
possible.
would be you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or, look, not everyone relates to me, so it has to be the person that you really relate to. But I
Yes.
thank you for today, Sam, so much. You've been such a blessing, and I know my listeners will take many things away. So thanks, everyone, for being here with us on another episode of Beyond the Numbers. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Beyond the Numbers podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.